Erev Tov, everyone. We are in the middle of Halacha Yudalid Klal 10, and we were going over the 7 conditions that are preconditions necessary before Reuven would be allowed to report Shimon's mistreatment. So we're on the 4th one. We did 3 of them yesterday. This is Prat Revi'i. The 4th condition, Beyoter Yizrael Kol Panim, Sheyeh Kol HaSipur Emet Beli Ta'arovet Sheker. That Reuven needs to make sure that the entire report is true without any mixture of falsehood. He cannot exaggerate the story worse than it actually is. Meaning he should not omit any minor detail. Knowing that maybe that detail could justify Shimon's actions. Even though that detail might not justify what his actions and why he did it. But nevertheless, still can't do it. Because maybe the people who are listening to this might not be demeaned. Shimon might not be demeaned in their eyes so much. On the other hand, if Reuven neglects to mention a detail which might pose favorable to Shimon, Shimon will be much more disparaged. And therefore, Isur Gadol hu lechase pratze, it's a great prohibition for Reuven to omit that. Klal hadavar, the general rule is, Shelo yegadel ha'avla yoter mima shehi. Reuven cannot make the offense worse than it actually is. De'im lochen, for otherwise, if he does so, hareu bichal mesaper Lashon Hara, he would be considered as part of Lashon Hara speakers. Ve'over al kama isurina ketuvin lema'alayim ba'peticha, and transgresses a number of prohibitions listed in the introduction, ayin sham. Prat HaChamishi, the 5th condition, shechaven letoilet. Reuven must intend to bring a constructive result. This is the primary factor why we even allow this. Ketavnu b'Saif Yud Gimel, like we recorded in Sif Yud Gimel above. In the Haggah he writes that it's possible that when the victim's intent in reporting how he harmed him is to relieve the emotional pain, that might be considered a toilet, because I'm trying to remove one of my feelings. Ufi zeh ma she'amru zal, what Chachamim said Masechet Yoma, de'aga belev ish yesichena la'acherim. So the pasuk says, when Shlomo says, when a person is dread in his heart and he feels depressed, yesichena la'acherim, he should tell concerns to others. Kai gam al inyan zeh, this would apply to this as well. When a person is in emotional pain because he's a victim, he should repeat the experience to others to relieve his distress, even though that means that he's going to be saying negative information, and that's fine. But he should also make sure not to miss out or not speak of the other conditions in this sa'if. The 6th condition, Prata Shishi, if he can achieve the same result through a different strategy, without having to speak about Shimon, then he should do that. Even if Reuven is compelled to report the incident because there's no other strategy, he cannot share the entire story. If Reuven can somehow minimize the offense that Shimon had done, so that Shimon will not be severely disparaged, and the benefit which Reuven was hoping to accomplish will not be compromised. It's a mitzvah for Reuven then to minimize the account and refrain from exposing Shimon's full disgrace. Since in any case he will get the benefit. Lastly, Prata Shevai, the 7th condition, Reuven has to make sure that the report that he says will not cause Shimon any monetary damages. Yoter mikfi adin shaya yoseh, which would exceed what he would have to pay according to halacha. Had witnesses testified in Beddin in this case. So there's a scenario with regards to this last one. A man forced out of his job by an abusive boss wants to collect the severance pay he believes he is owed. He knows a community activist who can help, but the man would have to divulge to the activist many details about the boss's behavior. Since this man has many grievances against his boss, he must check and recheck the following 7 conditions of toilet before speaking. Did I see my boss's misdeeds myself? Do his words and deeds meet the standards in halakha that define damage? Is there a possibility for me to resolve this issue directly with my boss? Am I exaggerating or omitting any detail to make him look worse? Do I have a constructive purpose in speaking? Is there some way to achieve my goal without relating the information to others? Will telling others about the situation cause my boss more damage than he would incur in a bed din? So all those things need to be taken into consideration. Ve'atar achi goes, now I want you to know, my brother, en tzarich shikul gadol hazeh be'ofen be'eze ofen esaper ha'inyan. How much careful deliberation you need to consider before relating the incident. Ki ba'et hasipur, because the moment you start saying the incident, hu omed besakana tzuma shel isur lashon hara, you are in extreme danger of violating lashon hara. Im lo yishmor atzmo b'chol hapratim, if you don't guard yourself that all these conditions are satisfied. Uvyoter bifrat hasheni ve'revi'i, particularly the second one and the fourth one. The second one was not to jump to the conclusion that he's in the right, and the fourth one not to exaggerate or omit details. Upashut al zed nuchal omar, clearly regarding, we can say the following pasuk: Mavet ve'hayim beyad halashon. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Ve'im lo yireh lachshov be'atzmo, and a person fails to consider and deliberate and calculate before he begins to speak of the story, then about how to properly express it. For sure he's going to stumble. Because at the time that the victim is speaking, normally what happens when you start relating a story, your temper takes over, your anger takes over, and now it's impossible now to guard yourself. Person should take great pains to create a strategy before he begins speaking. How am I going to relate this over? And not to exaggerate the offense worse than it is, and intend for a benefit. In all that we have written, we see a terrible mistake that many people make when telling others about how they were wronged. For example, say that you see Shimon is speaking Lashon Hara against Levi behind his back. And when you ask him, why are you speaking Lashon Hara about Levi? Tekef yashiv lecha, Shimon tells you right away, because he spoke about me in front of Naphtali. And he goes, this is a very big mistake for many reasons. Regardless who informed Shimon that Levi badmouthed him, Shimon is forbidden from the Torah to believe that person. Because of rechilut. We wrote many times. How can it be allowed for Levi to go and speak to Shimon on the basis of the rechilut that he accepted? That's slander. Even if it was true that Levi spoke badly against Shimon, it's still forbidden for Shimon to go around on that basis and speak Lashon Hara about Levi, like we explained in Sif Yud Aleph. So, and that generally is a lot of what we see, where people will say, "Oh, why are you talking bad about him? Well, he does the same thing. He goes around talking about me." And it's child games, but they're both wrong. That doesn't justify what is being done. The final halacha in Sefer Hafetz Chaim, part 1, part 2. The final halacha says, "Im na'asa davar shelo ka'ogen." If something improper was done. Uba Reuven v'sha'al Shimon, and Reuven says, Shimon, mi asa ta davar hazeh? Who did this thing? Who broke the window? Little kids, they play, they break things all the time. Who did that? Okay? Afilu im hu mevin sheReuven chosov hazeh. Even if Shimon realizes that Reuven suspects him, that he was the one who broke the window. Asur lo legalot mi asa ta davar. It's still forbidden for Shimon to clear his name and tell Reuven who committed the offense. Even though Reuven's asking him, and you can tell by Reuven's voice that he thinks it's him. He can't clear his name. Even if Shimon personally witnessed the offense. Rak, instead, Yashiv, he should reply, Ani lo asiti et hadavar. I did not break the window. Im lo shehu davar, unless the offense perpetrated against Reuven is something, asher afilu im lo haya shoalo, which even if Reuven had not asked him, v'lo haya choshto klal zeh, and had not suspected him at all being the perpetrator, haya gam ken tzarich lesaper lo, he would have still required to reveal to Reuven. Kegon, for example, im davar zehu mi'inyanim de ben adam l'chavero, if it's an offense in the area of man amongst his friend, v'nishlemu bo kol ha'pratim shebichlal zeh, and all the conditions earlier are met, or im hu me'inyanim de ben adam l'makom, or if it's an offense ben adam l'makom, v'nishlemu bo la'dvarim shekatadnu l'el, and all the other things were taken care of. So there's a scenario here, for example, it says, a salesperson accidentally breaks an expensive item and then kicks the shards under the shelf. Another salesperson witnesses the scene. When the boss finds out that the piece has been broken, she accuses the second salesperson who had other such accidents. The unjustly accused salesperson is allowed to say that she did not break the item, but she is not permitted to say who did.
What if she's asked? What's the act? You know who did it. And he didn't. I know that.
Probably cost them their job.
No, what's the answer to that, really?
So it would be, you could say, I know, but I can't tell you. Because saying I don't know is a lie.
Yeah.
Right? And saying who did is Lashon Hara. So it's two negatives, two lavim. So you say, I know, but I'm not allowed to tell you. And then the next question would be if he threatens him with his, if he gets threatened with his work, would be a different issue. V'kol zeh shekatavnu mitzad adin. He goes, all this that we wrote here, that Shimon can deny his involvement and shift the blame to others, is by strict halacha. Aval ra'ui lebal nefesh, it's correct for a pious individual, she'aseh lifnim mishurat adin, to go beyond the strict letter of law, v'lo yashmit et atzmo mizeh, not absolve himself about this, even when he's innocent. B'makom she'achol liyot she'yitvada la'shoel, if there is a possibility that by absolving himself, the one inquiring will discover who the actual offender was. And that person will be embarrassed. We find in Masechet Sanhedrin many stories. People shouldered the blame themselves in order that the identity of the real offender would not be discovered. We just learned in Daf Yomi. It says in Sefer Hasidim, if one is among a group of people, and something improper was done, you say, yeah, it was me. Even though he did not sin, ayen sham. And we saw, if you remember, in our Gemara class, you remember one of the rabbis came in and had a bad breath. And I think it was Rabbi Yehuda, he couldn't take the smell, right? He goes, who's the one that ate garlic before the thing? And I think it was, could have been Shmuel HaKatan or whatever, that got up and said, me, and he just walked out. And they yelled at him afterwards, how dare you do that and ruin the shiur? He goes, it wasn't me. I just didn't want to embarrass anybody else, right? But those are the ways of the Tzaddikim. Okay, so this concludes. There is an entire summary of Klal Yud, which we're not going to do because we run out of time. But Bezrat Hashem.
Was it improper of the rabbi to say, who is it that ate that girl?
Well, in a way, for the rabbi's doing it for rebuke, right? He's doing it because, hey, you're ruining the shiur, there's a smell. Like, for example, if someone passes gas in the middle of a class, and it really, really smells, that person deserves rebuke, right? Because you're ruining the environment, people can't learn, it's for whatever reason. Now, there's ways to rebuke, no question. But obviously this was something that Rav felt that he couldn't continue teaching, and therefore, he made the comment. But yeah, these are high levels. To take blame when you're not at fault is mamash a level of tzaddikim. And Yehi Ratzon, we should get to. Yeah, me neither.